All right, here we are again, Matt, figuring it out. I wore my hacker hoodie for today's topic. I should probably put the hood up just to,
Oh, I didn't get mine.
man,
Wait, I have a hat.
man,
Hold on.
you should get the hat. Anyway, I'll do the intro quick as we're getting everything ready. This isn't actually my
I have a
my
hat.
actual my actual hacker hoodie. Cyber hero, you are a cyber hero. I'm glad that you
No,
got
no
that
one's ever
t-shirt.
said that, nor should they.
So figuring it out today, what is our favorite hacker movie? A little bit of a change up from some of the stuff that we've done the past couple weeks, but something that is nevertheless very important and kind of tugs at our heartstrings on this one. So Matt, I know you've prepared a bunch of material. I at least wore the sweatshirt, so I don't know if you want to start off to kind of get the ball rolling on what the influential ones for you were.
Yeah, and I think for me it breaks down into a couple of categories. It's movies that are about hackers, and then there's kind of movies that involve hackers. Because I probably like you feel very strongly. So one of my favorite movies that involves hackers and arguably is about hackers, but like that's not the core plot line here, is the Matrix series, right? Neo was a hacker. It's just even before I got into any of this infosec stuff, I was a child of the 80s and 90s. The Matrix revolutionized, movie sci-fi. It kind of brought a lot of things together. And there's a very specific scene that as I got into infosec, and that was for me, it was around 2005 officially. Matrix Reloaded came out in 2003, and I remember the geek world freaking out over the Trinity Nmap scene. And then I actually knew what Nmap was, right? So that was like, boom, there's hacking. And of course, the connection to reality of that was tenuous at best because she used a program, I think, called SSH Nuke or something. But she used SSH, which is, it's both an admin tool and a potentially hacker tool, depending.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
So
my
is that
favorite movie that involves
okay?
that.
Okay.
How about you?
That kind of dates both of us because the original Matrix came out right as I was at the tail end of my college career. So for me, it was definitely something that I was kind of already on that path. I'll go back and I'll kind of give you my top two, and then I think my one is kind of solidified because it just left such an impression on me that I knew that was kind of my path and what I wanted to do. But, I go back and think about my childhood and some of the stuff that I watched. And of course, War Games pops into my head. And I remember
Everybody.
that being like such a cool movie growing up. Now, saying that now, I didn't know anything about, like security, and it was nothing that I had any interest in or whatever, but it was cool to me just because of how it happened and kind of the plot line around it and all that good stuff. I think the thing that really got me more interested was sneakers, right? Because it was like I was actually more interested in sort of the CIA intelligence world and all of that stuff. So it kind of crossed over and did a little bit of both of those things. It was like spy type stuff, but then also a lot of like hacking, social engineering type stuff. And I watch it now and I'm like, no wonder I freaking loved this movie years back because it was like, this is what I wanted to do. Now looking at my career, I'm like, I did it. I did some of this stuff. So it's pretty cool. But I would say out of those three, sort of the Matrix, War Games, and then Sneakers. I think Sneakers is still my favorite, just
Really?
because
Surprise.
there's just so many cool things in there for me that it's cheesy, it's super cheesy. You may remember last year it was actually one of the movies, not this past year, the year before, but
Yeah.
it was actually one of the movies that I was going to play for the BTB holiday party, but I decided against it because most of the people in the room, most of the people out of the company weren't even born when it actually came out.
It's been a while. I'll have to go revisit Sneakers. But what I'll say about War Games is I think that's also one of the ones you do have to put up there because that was like 83. Now, granted, I was barely existent at that time. But again, anyone that is a true nerd in this space, I think you kind of have to have seen it and be aware of it. And to give it a lot of credit, it was fairly accurate for the time about what they did in it, right? Like the hacking was he was using a modem to dial into this system directly, which, that's how you kind of bounced around and you would potentially dial in to do some remote admin stuff. That was true, through the 90s into the 2000s when I got involved, like there was still, quote, war dialing and all, hence the war games, I think, is probably the direct connection to war dialing. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. I think that, I remember pulling up my Commodore 64 and saying like, I'm going to be a hacker now and I'm going to do all this cool stuff. And I think I ended up just playing like War of Worlds or something stupid like that, some stupid game where it was comma 8, comma 1 sort of.
Yeah, you were close to hacking. You decided the game. Yeah,
I hacked into the disk that was in the disk drive. That's about all I was able to do.
Yeah, see out hello world, and that was the extent of your.
Basically, it is interesting to kind of look at how that has changed, though. I mean, that was pretty close to reality back in the days, right, of war games. And then as things have gotten more complicated, more sophisticated, you get people picking them apart. I know that you mentioned Wired had done best hacking movies of all time. I can't remember how far back was that they did that. Was that just in the past year or so, or was that was a couple years ago? Wasn't it?
It was like late 2018, I think. So it's fairly current. I mean, obviously we're kind of almost mid 2020 here, but yeah, I mean, it was pretty accurate. I mean, they covered war games. They covered a lot of this stuff, and they had a hacker comment on the viability and reality of the scene. So I don't think. I'm not too worried about the reality. I think we all know the movies are the movies, and they're going to intentionally get it wrong a lot. The pattern that emerges is flashy lights, lots of screens, lots of pop-ups. And again, if you've ever done any of this, you know that you don't want too much information popping up. It's nothing but distracting. And if we go to one of my other favorites, the movie Hackers, which I don't think officially mentioned yet, that because, again, as a child of the 80s and 90s, mid-90s, really weird time for America. I mean, we were coming off the 80s and leopard pants and cheetah pants and big hair and all that.
What do you mean coming off of that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't. I was a child, but you probably were. No. So, you have Angelina Jolie, and she has a whatever you call that short haircut, but she is this elite hacker, and they have these scenes where they're battling. But what really struck me is this phrase, and we've used it at work, is they're going to hack the Gibson, right? Because the Gibson is this unhackable thing right now. There's no kind of direct correlation to that in the real world, but like the young guys have no idea what the heck we're saying. If we say like, oh yeah, you hacked the Gibson, like, good job, kudos.
Yeah, it is funny though. It is funny because like we've had, and kind of going through even some of the history of what we used to provide on services and kind of what we'd say to clients, like you look at the influence of the industry into film, and kind of you see it more and more. And I think there's almost more of like you see like a dabbling of like, oh, well, this hacker is just going to take care of this, and there's some bigger plot line. But then on the flip side of it, kind of industry being influenced by media, we used to have clients that would request to sit and actually do, like side by side, like, well, we want to observe you as you're doing this penetration test. And I still remember, like, so hilariously sitting there with a client beside me, and you're like, so I'm going to run this command now. And it was like, type. And you're like, okay, this is what it does. So it was almost more teaching, which I still think is beneficial. But it was so funny because you would have, some clients that got it, that understood that, it was really just, a technical execution of things to try to get to some sort of goal. And then you had some people like, oh, I thought it would be more flashy than this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm just wearing, it's Jake from State Farm. Like, I'm wearing a pair of khakis, just sitting here in my button down, taking care of business. Like, I know I made the joke about my, about my sweatshirt, but it's the reality was it's much different than how it's portrayed. But I think what we've seen now is, like I said, that dabbling of like, oh, well, we have this hacker person that's going to do this. And it's like this trivial, like they're just supporting whatever the larger plot line is, right?
Yeah.
Aside from things like, Mr. Robot and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a series I haven't seen, by the way. And I've had so many people in our space and beyond tell me to watch it. So now that we're quarantined, it'll probably have to get added to the list, but I have enough on that list already. But yeah, that's one that I've heard is fairly, as accurate as the movies, because look, they have to take liberties with things. You take a Marine and have him judge, drill sergeant scenes. He or she's going to find something wrong with that, and like anything else. EMS, EMTs, firefighters, you're going to have issues, police. But, movies have to take some liberties. But yeah, I mean, for me, those are the two that really stand out, Hackers and The Matrix, but there's so many other good ones. I think, to me, the connections with nerd culture and just having that culture, that's the fun part of it. Those stupid jokes we get to have about hacking the Gibson or whatever it is. That's what I enjoy the most about, this kind of stuff. And I don't know. We don't have time maybe today to play some of those videos. Maybe we'll do a follow-up at some point about let's maybe comment on some of those clips. But there are fun. I wonder what others at BTB. Anyone that might happen to watch this?
Yeah, it might be good. And post to the comments, or just maybe we'll put it out there on the intranet or via chat and see if anybody has any other additional things that they'd kind of throw in there to the mix. But my top is still sneakers, right? I can have a top 3 with War Game, sneakers, and The Matrix, but that one sneakers definitely beats them out.
I have to go rewatch that. That'll be all. I don't know. I'll have to find it on some kind of on demand or something. So
yeah, go watch Sneakers. Go watch Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot is actually pretty damn accurate. I think they used a lot of industry people for guidance on that one. So a lot of what they do there. Now, obviously, it's a far-fetched fictional show, but at the same time, the first season was pretty dead on.
Yeah, Sneakers I've seen. It's just been a long while, so I'll have to look into that one. And then Thor was in some kind of hacker movie, right? It wasn't just called Hacker or something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No clue. Not heard of that one. Cool, man.
Well, thank you, Ron. We figured out what our favorite hacker-involved movies are.
Yeah, not as serious this time. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See ya.